Hello everyone, welcome to Primetime Recaps. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. It will make us happy and help us keep making videos like this. Today, I'm going to be explaining a movie titled Locust, released in the year 2005. The movie starts in Virginia, as a couple comes into the USDA research lab at night, to feed the experimental swarm of Australian plague locust. They intend to complete the task quickly and go on a date. Willie is a foreigner who is terrified at the sight of the insects. He refuses to go inside the box to help feed them, but his girlfriend Gina laughs at him and does it herself. The box has two glass doors, but one of it requires a code in order to open. After she gets inside with a ficus tree as food, the first door is supposed to be closed so that the insects will be unable to escape. Gina is so confident that she doesn't bother to wear a protective gear before making direct contact with the insects. Soonest, she realizes that it was a wrong mistake to make. As soon as the insects start to attack and bite her, Willie quickly runs to help her, but he doesn't know the code to the door. Even while being ceaselessly attacked by hundreds of locusts, she blurts out the code letting him in. Eventually, he uses the protective coat to dust the insects away, bringing her out of the box. The duo is out of breath and in shock by what they just experienced. As the next scene opens in Washington, the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture named Maddie Reardon is with her husband Dan, and they have planned to spend the day together, before Maddie leaves for a different state that evening. However, their plan is disrupted when Maddie answers a call from her assistant, Vivian. She apprises her about a USDA lab that has been red flagged by the GAO. Maddie is astonished because she wasn't informed about any dangerous experiments taking place in the lab. She decides to investigate using her security contacts, only to find out that the information is classified. Just because of how serious the situation is, she intends to find out about the experiment before traveling that evening. As a result of that, she changes her plans with her husband, and tells her assistant to be in the lab in the next 15 minutes. Dan is annoyed because she doesn't have time for him. He has given up a promotion and a salary raise to be there with her, so when she is about going to work, he feels even more disappointed. At the lab, Maddie meets her former professor, Dr. Peter Axelrod, who is also the researcher she is supposed to investigate. Peter shows her the lab where the experimental locusts are being kept. In order to reveal what he has created, he extracts a single locust from the box and squirts it with a pesticide. Surprisingly to Maddie, the pesticide does nothing to the insect, implying that it's immune to it. Peter adds that he has created a hybrid by crossing Australian plague locust with the desert locust. The genetically modified locust is resistant to all known pesticides. This shows that they reproduce 10 times faster than normal locust, and they live for several years. Maddie realizes that even if one of the insects is released, it can reproduce at an exponential rate and destroy continents, causing locust flags. She concludes that the experiment is a bioweapon and assumes that it is being funded by the Department of Defense. Finally, there's no other way but to order the officials to destroy all the hybrid locust. She also fires Peter from the lab for conducting unethical and dangerous experiments. Afterwards, scientists with protective suits and flamethrowers exterminate all the locusts. One of them secretly saves a handful of insects in a tube labeled biohazard. He has been bribed by the Department of Defense to get them. While changing, he accidentally drops the jar in a sink, which results to several locusts escaping down the drain. Later, we see the escaped locusts flying away through a manhole. After several hours, Maddie returns home to Dan, who has been waiting for her. He informs her calmly that he can't be with her anymore because she prioritizes her work more than him. Maddie can't persuade him otherwise, because of the little time she has to catch her flight for her next mission. Meanwhile, in Maryland, the exterminator brings the remaining insects that he had retrieved from the lab. The case is being transferred to an army truck, but suddenly, the man driving the vehicle is attacked by an unknown insect, which looks like the locust that escaped earlier. The accident causes the case to drop off the vehicle and get crushed, and eventually, the insects inside it are let free into the air. A month after the incident, Maddie discovers that she is pregnant and calls Dan. He receives the call but ends it before she can tell him the news. In the next scene, we see a couple camping by the river. They wake up to discover that their tent is filled with hundreds of locusts. Few hours later, a swarm of locusts descends on the Napa Valley, causing farmers to run in fear. Maddie, who is on the road with her team, also sees the same swarm flying overhead. They immediately begin to track its pattern. Meanwhile, Peter is at home conversing with his wife. He is disturbed about their financial condition because he's now unemployed, and adds that he's worried about their daughter, Sophia. Peter accompanies Sophia to the bus stop, then makes his way to the gym, but suddenly, he hears a strange buzz getting louder by the second. He stops by a cornfield and sees a large swarm of locusts going into the sky. On getting closer, he is astonished to realize that they are the hybrid locust he created. He quickly follows Sophia's school bus, but before he gets there, the locust reached the bus and attacked the children. Peter arrives and carries an unconscious Sophia to his car. In Napa Valley, Maddie and her team reached the farm that was attacked earlier. They notice that the locust has stripped every bush and tree down to the back. Maddie realizes the intensity of the situation and informs the Department of Agriculture of the dangers. Back in Washington, D.C., Dan also finds out about the locust infestation and calls Maddie to inquire about it, since he works in the U.S. Weather Service. Maddie asks him for an update on weather patterns, in order to predict the swarm's next movement. They guess that one of the two swarms that have been formed on each coast will be moving to Pittsburgh in few hours. Meanwhile, somewhere in Visalia, California, a crowd has gathered for a citrus festival, uninformed about the swarm of deadly insects coming their way. At last, Maddie and the team reaches the citrus festival and tells them to evacuate there. Unfortunately, before everyone is in a safer location, the swarm attacks them. In the midst of the chaos, someone unknowingly drops a camera that records the event. In the next scene, the swarm reaches Pittsburgh, forming huge black clouds in the sky. Soonest, the insects wreak havoc in the city, entering office buildings and houses through the air vents. At Pittsburgh International Airport, Peter calls a worker from the air traffic control and tells her not to launch planes to the northeast, but unfortunately, the workers didn't take him serious. Due to their mistake, a plane runs into the swarm and crashes with an explosion. Afterwards, Peter goes back to the hospital with his wife and daughter. They broadcast the news, which shows the video captured at the Citrus Festival. Just immediately, the FBI agents arrive to arrest Peter and take him under federal custody. Subsequently, Maddie meets her boss, Secretary Morales, and many other officials, and they converse about their next move. Dan is also present, and because of his expertise in crops, he proposes that they harvest the crops across the country, in order to starve the locust and save the crops, before they get destroyed. While in the meeting, they find out that the eastern swarm of the creatures have turned carnivorous and has started eating livestock. They conclude that if the locust is starved, they might feed upon animals and eventually humans. After the meeting, Maddie informs Dan that she is pregnant with his child. He is elated, but they've no time to celebrate. Meanwhile, Peter is conversing with the FBI bureau officials about a way to stop the locusts. He claims that there is no way to stop them without killing 50% of the American population. The scientists find an alternate way where only 10% of the population will be killed. They plan to drop an extremely toxic VX gas on the locust, in order to kill them. Afterwards, Maddie flies in to meet Peter and finds out about the FBI's plan to drop the VX nerve gas. She protests the plan, comparing it to a nuclear bomb attack that will kill millions of people. Instead, the officials tells her to focus on the billion of people who will be saved. General Miller intends to do a test of the gas on the swarm that is flying over Ohio. Maddie agrees to it, on the condition that the test will be done in rural areas, with less population. She still calls the national news and secretly informs them about the test run, before she boards the helicopter with the rest of the group. As soon as they're airborne, they're being informed that the target swarm over Ohio has moved in the direction of southern Indiana, which has more population. If they proceed with the plan, they will be killing millions of people just because of the test run. Maddie disagrees, but in response, General Miller says that he never agreed that there won't be any fatalities. Eager to do something to stop them, Maddie uses a spanner to smash the VX container. Frightened that she will kill everyone on board, Miller reluctantly turns around before the gas is released. After landing, Maddie calls Dan and pleads with him to check on her grandfather, Lyle, whose farm lies right in the path of the locust. Immediately, Dan leaves for Indiana, while Maddie and Peter do the same. On his way, Peter receives a call from his daughter who's now out of coma. With renewed motivation, they reach the farm and meet Lyle, who is gathering and moving the cattle and indoor. Maddie and Peter assist him, as Dan joins them later. Not long after the farm is attacked by the swarms, the group decides to take shelter in a metal grain silo, in order to save themselves. As they suggest ideas to keep the insects away from the harvested grains, Maddie recalls seeing a few locusts outside getting killed in the electric fly trap. She proposes that they use an old generator that'll send an electric current which will hopefully kill the bugs. As they attempt to use it, they find out that the generator has no fuel, but Peter volunteers to get the fuel from the other side of the barn. As he runs outside with a sheet to protect himself, the swarm attacks immediately, but he manages to get the generator inside. By this time, he is covered in blood, as he reveals that the insects have grown carnivorous. Lyle loads up the generator and Dan attaches the cables to the metal shell of the silo, and this sends a powerful current through it. Immediately, the insects that are attacking the silo are being killed because of the electricity. As Peter struggles because he has lost too much blood, he eventually dies. Afterwards, Dan and Maddie rushes to Washington, D.C. At the Department of Homeland Security, the officials accede to Miller's plan to use the toxic VX gas on the swarms, but Maddie and Dan walks into the meeting and tries to convince them otherwise. When they suggest using electricity, Miller disagrees, but the Secretary of the Department of Energy reveals that it is possible to create a massive electric current that'll kill the swarms, as both swarms are approaching the continental power grids. Eventually, all the officials support the plan, excluding Miller, who warns that he'll act if the plan fails. Maddie remembers that the insects are attracted to light, so she calls the USWS asking them to launch weather balloons near the power lines, so the insects would be attracted. The next day, power is switched off throughout the United States. It is rerouted to the two power lines, each one in Western and Eastern America. Maddie and Dan arrive at the site and ensure that the Air Force move the weather balloons closer to the power lines. In no time, the power grids are activated, and the swarms fly into the amplified power cables. However, the cables burst into flames, but fortunately, the plan still works. The locust swarms are killed by the electricity. The officials who had been in fear celebrate their success. Although, General Miller is warned about the consequences of wanting to kill millions of people. In the end, a year later, Maddie has given birth to a child and she's living a happy life with Dan. She receives an offer for a new job, but consults her husband before accepting it, indicating that her family is her priority. I hope you liked the movie. Please turn on the bell icon to be the first to watch our videos when we post contents like this. You can also suggest a movie you'll love us to explain in the comments section. Thanks for watching.